Hello and welcome to another edition of For the Record. I'm Sean Murphy. My guest today is David Wallner. He is brewer and owner of the Willimantic Brewing Company. We'll meet him when we come back, so stay with us. Welcome back to For the Record. I'm Sean Murphy. My guest today, a first-timer on the show, David Wallner, brewer and owner of the Willimantic Brewing Company. First of all, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Sean. Good to be here.
So for those that don't know, what is a brewing company?
Well, it's very historic. People started brewing thousands of years ago, and it became a hobby of mine when I was going to UConn. And it grew.
As many college kids, by the way.
Well, you know,
you just take it to another level.
Let's just say that when I was 18,
Yeah.
you could drink legally in the state, and I found that a lot of the beer on the market was flavorless, and the beers I did like were very expensive, and on a college budget,
That's
of course.
Right. You're living on pizza and cheap beer at that point.
And actually, from my dorm, I could call up a number and pizza would be delivered, and so could beer. But again, it still left me lacking and
Yes.
feeling I needed more.
Wow.
And there was a local general store nearby called Champlain's General Store in Eagleville, and they sold home brewing supplies. And it all started from that.
Home brew. So you really took it to another level. You didn't like the taste of the local beer, or not local, just what was available to you. So you started your own company, your own beer company.
It took a
basically.
long time.
Yeah.
So this was back in 1980. I started home brewing, and the local homebrew shop would run competitions, and I would bring my beer. And one time I was watching them, and I see them pop the top, and they sniff it, and they're looking at it,
It's
and
like
they
what you do
taste
with
it.
wine,
It
isn't it?
actually,
Yeah.
well, you know, when you're going to judge something,
Right.
you need to be critical of it, and you do take in the nose, you take in the
palates,
clarity.
right?
It's all those different factors. And I saw them try it, and they winced their nose, and they wrote some notes, and they basically told me it was awful.
Your beer? Who told you it was awful?
They told me it was
Wow.
bad.
Well, you know what? Then it's back to the drawing board, right?
And the good thing was, since they ran a homebrew shop, they said, well, try this, add more malt, use fresh hops. And then the next few years, I was winning their homebrew competitions.
Now, were you still a college kid when this was going on?
The
or-
first couple years I was. I graduated in 1982.
Wow, that's amazing. So now, let me ask you this question, because I've been to wine tastings before, and you're supposed to spit it out. You know, you're supposed to just, tempt the palate, I guess. Do you do that with beer too?
I don't.
No, of course not.
It's alcohol
you
abuse.
drink it. Yeah, it's.
I mean, if it's bad, it's bad.
Right.
But if it's palatable, why not?
So to pick it up there, you honed your skills.
It took years and years of home brewing. I started attending some homebrew sessions. Different organizations would put on a weekend and learn how to brew. I went to a couple breweries and just for the day. And then in 1987, there was the Brewers Association put on what's called their Brewers Conference, Microbrewers Conference, and it was in Boston. And I attended along with Jim Cook from Sam
Yes,
Adams,
I was gonna say,
the
you knew
Slezer
him.
brothers from Harpoon,
All the big names are out there, huh?
Boston Beer Works, Catamount, Sierra Nevada. There was only about 70 attendees, but I was hooked.
Yeah.
I also met two gentlemen that were home brewing, Les Sinnock and Phil Hopkins, and they actually started getting the process going to change the laws in Connecticut so that a brew pub or a brewery would be legal again. And they actually did open up the Hartford Brewery on Pearl Street
Right.
in the early 90s. So they got the legislation passed, so eventually I would be able to do the same thing.
Now, why was it illegal for a while?
After Prohibition, a lot of things just
Never came
never
off the
came
books.
back.
Yeah.
I mean, even the blue laws just recently that changed to allow Sunday alcohol sales. It's been a long time coming. And
But I have to ask you a question about that. Why were the liquor store owners seem like they were opposed to it? Is it because
Well,
strictly staffing on Sunday?
You
I
know,
always thought you
that's a
made
big
business
part of
by
it, though.
being open.
you do, but you can also, if you're spreading your business out over more days, and you're not really gaining any extra revenue from it, then all you're doing is increasing your costs.
Right.
And the grocery stores were totally going to benefit.
Right.
But the small mom and pop, somebody that's already
point.
working 6 days a week from 9 in the morning till 9 at night, and now you're going to open an extra day. I just met with somebody today that I asked him how the recent holiday was, and it was kind of a bust.
Really?
Sunday was good. Saturday was good, but the Monday holiday was pretty
Maybe
much a
people
waste of time.
don't realize that it's also open on certain holidays too, and not just
It
Sundays.
may take some time.
But if you're on the borders, doesn't it make sense to not have people drive into Rhode Island or Massachusetts
course.
or New York? So.
Of course, but he is on one of the borders, and
Yeah.
he still didn't really see much from it.
Wow. So so you're doing the Boston thing. You got hooked. There was this, almost like a convention.
Yep,
of
exactly. That's exactly what it was.
And you learned even more then. And then the laws changed in Connecticut, and things were just kind of falling into place for you.
Well, what happened is in 1988, I met my wife, and she said she wants to run a pub, and I said, well, I want to make beer. So then we started to look to see how we could do it. Started writing business plans. I was going to these brewing conferences every year. They were all over. They were in New Orleans. They were in Atlanta. And again, meeting the people in the industry, meeting the people that build the equipment. And it was important to do that because a home brewer can make good beer sometimes, maybe even all the time. But to make it so you can actually sell it on a regular basis, you need to really hone your craft, as you said. And in 1991, we actually opened up a small restaurant, sort of a deli, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, in the old Capitol Theater in Willimantic. And that was sort of a stepping stone for us to learn about the restaurant business. We really had hoped to buy that building and put a brewery in it, but financing was not available at the time. And we thought like a brew pub and cinema would be kind of neat. But that didn't work out, so we continued to look. We actually looked here in New London, down along the waterfront, and on Bank Street at some buildings. We looked in Norwich.
There's a lot of bars and pubs on Bank Street in downtown New London. I mean, there are lots of other things too, but it seems like...
Well, it seemed like a perfect marriage, plus with the ferries and
Right.
the train. And again, knowing that fresh brewed beer would be an attraction, because there's nothing like it. Once you try it, it's just unto itself.
Well, let me ask you a question. What is the state of beer in this country in general, as far as you're concerned? Now, I understand you're coming from the point of view of a local home, started out as a home brewer, but you have your own local brewery, so you're probably not a big fan of the national guys.
Oh,
right?
not at all. I mean, first of all, we wouldn't have the brands we have today if it wasn't for the national brands. And we wouldn't have sporting events that are, contributed to because of
sponsored.
them. I mean, you think about it, NASCAR and,
Right.
and football and
Yep.
baseball.
Big sponsors, the national.
And there's, first of all, there's 80 plus million beer drinkers in the United States. And, a lot of them drink Bud and Miller and Coors. They drink the big guys. Because it's approachable.
Right.
They're easy to drink.
It's available too.
And there's nothing wrong with them. It's hard to make beer that's light in flavor and character and have it always taste good. Their consistency is amazing. When Budweiser brews Bud today, they're brewing maybe 5 batches today, and they blend it with the 5 from yesterday, and they take those 10 and blend it with the previous 10.
But isn't
so
there
when
like
they release
preservatives in there and stuff to
no,
get it?
Not necessarily.
No?
I mean, they may pasteurize it, they may filter it a certain way. Most breweries would not bother to put preservatives in. Hops themselves act as a preservative in beer. One of the reasons why Budweiser, dates all their bottles and cans is because they know that there's a freshness issue.
Right.
The sooner you drink the beer from the time it leaves the brewery, the fresher it's going to be. The longer it sits, most of the time, it's going to start to degrade. There are certain beers that get actually better with age. I've brewed some beers that are 20 years old, and they're even better now than they were back
There's
then.
not too many beer drinkers that are going to be letting their beer sit around long enough for it to go bad, I would imagine.
Well,
right?
you hope not.
Now, is there something too, like the color of the bottle, that can contribute to
Typically
beer going,
clear,
like skunky or something?
Clear bottles, green bottles can contribute to that skunky character. What happens is the light gets in and it oxidizes some of the hop compounds in it, and it will cause a skunky taste. But it's actually more of an aroma than a taste. You can get rid of that by basically pouring it a couple times and letting it. We call it degas, but there's ways of doing it. But certain breweries, as you know, that's their signature flavor.
Right.
If it didn't have that skunk, you'd say there was something wrong with it.
Right. Now, how would you describe your flavors of beer?
Well, I'm very lucky that we brew on what's called a 7-barrel system. It produces 14 kegs per batch. And in doing so, as a matter of fact, we brewed a beer yesterday. It was called our 6-shooter oyster stout. And we put oyster shells in the boiling tank. And it imparts a little bit of a mineral character. We do it once a year. It's our virtually totally non-vegan friendly beer. Just about every other beer we make is vegan friendly. Some we add honey to, which would make it non-vegan. But otherwise, everything we do is all natural ingredients. And what happens is we take barley, and depending on the varieties and the colors of them, we can basically make any color beer, any flavor, and any strength of beer just by a combination of the barleys that we blend together. And what we do is we steep the barley in water, and we extract the sugar from that barley. Just like if you put maybe some bread in your mouth and you start to chew it. The more you chew it, the sweeter it gets. It's the enzymes that are breaking down those starches into sugars. And we do the same thing. That barley is being broken down into sugar. We take that sugary liquid, it's called wort, W-O-R-T, and then we boil it. And while we boil it, we add hops. And hops are sort of the spice of beer. And we use hops from all over the world, New Zealand, Germany, Poland, the U.S., and even some from Connecticut, some of our own, as a matter of fact, that we grow. And depending on when we add those hops, we get different characteristics. So if we add them very early on and they boil for a long time, we'll get a bittering characteristic. And hops that are grown in the northwest U.S. have sort of a citrusy or piney character. Hops from England are sort of earthy, mossy. Hops from Germany are often spicy. So depending on the style of beer and depending on when we add them, we can get some of those characters. If we add the hops mid-boil, we'll get that flavor, that spiciness, that citrusy, that piney. If we add them right at the end, so it only is in there for a few moments, we get the aromatics of it. So when I design a beer, I consider, okay, first of all, what's the color going to be? Secondly, what's the mouthfeel? How much alcohol am I looking for? How much viscosity maybe? How much bitterness? All of those characteristics.
Thickness maybe, the head?
Thickness, exactly. Yeah. That's part of it too. And then eventually, how is that going to be when you finally take that sip and you put it down? What's that lasting character? Does it leave you feeling, wow, I can't wait to get another sip? Or does it just sit a little longer? So certain beers, of course, we make, they're great for eating with. You want a heavy steak or you want to have a pasta dish, just like you would pair with wine. There's
exactly.
certain things
that
you'd say, wow, this beer is interesting on its own, but it's almost too much. It needs something to balance that sweetness, that bitterness, that maltiness.
Do you do like some of the other beer places do, depending on the time of the year, they'll have like a, pumpkin flavor or just, something October-ish, anything
exactly.
along those
so
lines?
Oktoberfest is
right.
This time of year. Sam Adams is usually the first to release theirs in the end of July. It's a little bit early.
July, wow, that's the middle of summer.
It's our most popular style of beer we brew.
Wow.
Last year, we brewed, 23.5 barrels. So that's 47 kegs of Oktoberfest, and we sold it in 33 days.
Wow.
And we don't sell our beer anywhere outside of our place.
Right, so you can't go to a package store.
You can't go to a package store, you can't go to another bar or restaurant to try our beer. The only other way you'll find our beer out in the market would be is if we go and donate it at a charity event, which we have. This is the time of year also.
Right.
For the next 5 weekends, we have multiple events that we'll be bringing our beer to support various charitable causes.
Now, I know you mentioned Jim Koch and Sam Adams. Does it get to a point where you can become too big and you're not considered, the local guy? I know he's a big Boston guy and everything, but would you want to get that big? Maybe for financial reasons you would, but is there come a point where he's closer to, Bud and Heineken than he is the local guy?
Well, he's still got his hands involved.
Yes, he's messing around with it.
He's very much a big part of the beers that they make. And every week they seem to be coming out with some new interesting style. It's changed in the last few years. Sierra Nevada has done the same thing. They had their standard 6 or 8 beers that they ran year-round, certain seasonals, as you had mentioned. And then they started to realize that, there's a lot more that we can do. We're great brewers. And Jim Koch feels the same way. So he does a homebrew competition. They pick a winner, this long shot competition you might have seen. And then that beer gets produced and sent out. And it also, it brings a little freshness into the brewery. The brewers have a good time. They're like, oh, we've never used juniper berries before in a beer. Let's see how that works.
Because they all get to sample it, right?
Exactly.
Everyone who works in
and they get to work on the recipe.
Right.
And that's, the size of my system allows me to be very experimental. So I use different yeast strains, which will give different characteristics to a beer. I brought some certified gold with us. It's our flagship beer. It's got 3 different malts and 2 different hops. It's a simple recipe, but it's the most difficult recipe for me to duplicate because, again, I only make 1 batch at a time. So if the temperature's a little bit different when I add the water to the grain, if it's a hotter day and I don't get the same evaporation off the kettle, if the hops are a fresh bag versus one that's been in the cooler for a week or 2, it can affect it. My goal is to make it so the last pint that comes out of the keg tastes the same as the fresh one that just came out of the new tank. And it's difficult to do. And that's why I mentioned Anheuser-Busch. They blend and blend and blend, so when they release a beer, millions of gallons of it all taste the same.
Yeah.
Mine, batch today that I make, if I made it again tomorrow, it could be a little bit different because we don't blend.
And you like
Everything's
that, though,
a one.
right?
I love it.
Yeah, and I think one of the things you love the most, and maybe a lot of your staff is that you can play around, you can experiment on a constant basis. Your goal is somehow to find perfection in a beer. Maybe you'll never find it. Maybe you'll get close with this one. Maybe there's a certain batch where you're like, wow, this didn't work at all. But that's okay because it's small enough. But also there's the possibility that you could get it right or very close to it. I sense the passion in your voice when you're talking about it, how much you love it.
I can't get enough of it.
Yeah.
It's true. And it is difficult because it's not me just drinking it.
Right.
I'm actually probably my worst consumer because I'll put the certified gold, when I put it on tap, I'll taste it to make sure it's ready, and then I won't drink it because it's so popular.
Right.
And I'll maybe try to get a little bit in the middle and at the end just to make sure it's still tasting the way it should. But it's my guests that come in and they say, "Oh, I see this batch seems a little sharper than the last."
Oh,
or,
so they're noticing it and they're
attuned.
commenting on it too.
So any beer that I do repeat, and there's probably 30 different recipes I repeat throughout the year.
And do you usually get them the same for the most part? No?
No, I'm close. But I keep very meticulous notes. So, I do write down what the weather is for the day, anything that's changed.
All that matters, huh?
I don't know if it matters, but I write it down.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, they have computers now you can use stuff for too.
Really?
Right? Yeah.
I don't know what those are.
But again, the passion in your voice for it, it's amazing. The economic times that we're in now, does that affect you? Does it affect the people?
Well,
who
they
buy
always
your
say
beer?
that in good times, people will go out and enjoy themselves, and in bad times,
They'll stay home and drink, right?
well, they do a little bit more of that now.
Yeah.
There's no doubt. I mean, local restaurants affect me less than I think the grocery stores now. And the fact, you have Whole Foods that you can buy beer at, and they're selling good beers. The grocery stores, you get the ready-to-eat rotisserie chickens and things. It's so much easier to just go home. And it's partly true to the fact that people don't want to be out drinking and driving, which is not a good thing to do if you're drinking too much. But responsible drinking is fine. But I think it's almost that attitude of, well, if I can just be home, it's good enough.
But you can bring a jug of this home with you. You don't have to go to your place and only drink there, right?
No, that's correct.
Okay, so you can bring a jug of it home with you and make your night at home as opposed to just at your place.
And the beauty is, again, you're going to the brewery, you're getting it fresh right from the tap. You can taste it, you say, oh, that's the one I want.
Oh, okay.
And you know exactly how it's going to taste. It's not like it was packaged 3 months ago and you're not sure when you go to a store. Literally, you watch it being filled and then you take it. So it can't get any fresher. The beer in my place travels basically downstairs from a brewery on the main floor, maybe 8 feet, goes to a tank, and then it comes up 8 feet to a line that goes to your glass.
How big is your place overall up there?
Well, it's an old historic post office built in 1909 with limestone front, giant columns. We seat about 200 inside, and we have an outdoor patio in front of the building that seats about another 60.
Would you say that you're busier in the summer just because
Actually,
people are more
weekdays
active?
we're busier in the summer. Weekends, of course, the weather, if
Right.
it's nice, people are going to be down in New London. They're going
Right.
to be out on their boats, going to be going to the beach, taking trips. So we're actually a little quieter on the weekends. But now that the summer is pretty much winding down, we'll start to get busier on the weekends. We definitely recommend reservations. We often run an hour and a half wait on a Friday or Saturday night, in the prime dinner time, the 6:30 to 8 o'clock time.
Now, so to go back in time a little bit, you said your wife wanted to open up a pub and you wanted to make beer. So if that had come to fruition right then and there would be a pub that would have many other beers in it besides your beer, I would imagine, right? And so you'd be competing with, but you'd be kind of emphasizing your beer. Hey, try our own. But there are other here if you want it, but try our own too.
Well, actually, that was our philosophy from the beginning. So we were in the Capitol Theater for 3 years as a deli, serving breakfast, lunch, early dinner, and some ice cream. Couldn't put the brewery in. An existing restaurant had closed across the street from us. It was called the Victorian Lady. And we were able to move in, basically bought all the equipment, and opened up as a full-service restaurant and craft beer bar in 1994. And this was before most people were doing it. I think there was a bar in New Haven called Richter's that was known for having a lot of taps. But we were one of the first, definitely one of the first in Northeast Connecticut. And we featured Sierra Nevada, Shipyard, Sam Adams, basically all American beers,
Right.
fresh beers, and a lot of people didn't like them. They was too flavorful. They would still come in and want their Budweiser. But eventually, you turn them on from a Budweiser to a Shipyard Goat Island Light, and then maybe they might try a New England Atlantic Amber, and they're going from pale to amber, and then they're drinking the darker beers. And we were there for 3 years, and then we were able to finagle a deal. A local business person in town bought the post office, which was vacant for 30 years, in 1996. We struck a deal with them to help them renovate it. It took about a year, and we opened in February '97 in the historic post office, and we put our brewery in. And we still feature, we have 40 tap lines. Only between 7 to 10 are usually our own. And I still have Sam Adams and Sierra Nevada, and we have Narragansett now on tap. So we've always felt that we wanted to be what a brew pub should be, which is a variety of beers, not just the ones that we make, but cover the gamut, so you can find something you're going to like.
Do you ever talk to the other real local guys? Like, I spend time in Westerly. I think there's a Westerly
Grey Sail has opened up.
Yeah.
We've actually had their porter on tap for a little while. We've had Newport Storm, Cottrell we carry. Now there's a new brewery opening in Mystic, Beard Brewing, or Stonington, I guess he is. So
boy, they got wineries and beer places there.
And Connecticut right now is growing at an exponential rate.
So there are wine trails, there are beer trails too?
So a gentleman, Brian Turner, started this CT Beer Trail. And he's put up a website, and he's invited basically breweries and beer bars to join it. And you pay a monthly fee, and then he helps you promote events that are going on. So he's done quite a few of these bikes and brew events where they start at a certain place, maybe get 40, 50, 80 cyclists together, and they bicycle to a brewery or a beer bar, have lunch. Some of them bike back, some of them get on the sag wagon and ride back.
After they've had lunch.
But they've done it a few times at our place, and it's been very popular. And other events that are promoted. There's, as I mentioned, this is the time of year now where there's a lot of beer events. This Saturday, I'll be at the Brass City Brew Fest. The 22nd, there's one at Ski Sundown, one at Harbor Yard in Bridgeport. The 29th, there's one in New Canaan. The 6th, there's one in Seymour. There's one at Mohegan Sun. So this is the time of year where we get invited to go and pour our beer. And again, that's how you can try our beer other than coming to Willimantic.
Right, and that's great. And you're getting out to other parts of the state. How far do people come from? Are they coming from Rhode Island and other states to try your beer in Willimantic?
We keep tabs. We have little comment cards, and then we tally usually every month where people are coming from. And we do get quite a few from Rhode Island, Massachusetts. On Sundays is typically the day when people like to make their little pub crawls. And they'll drive down and they'll bring their growlers and fill them.
What's a growler?
So this is a growler. It's a half-gallon jug that we can put beer in. We fill it right from the tap, seal it up. And
but you have your own too that people can get there at your place, the growlers?
This is ours.
Okay.
This is with our logo. We do allow, if somebody brings in their own, if it's clean and sanitized, we will fill theirs with our beer. We can only put our beer in it. We can't fill up anybody else's. But it's gotten to be very popular. We don't do a lot of it, but it definitely offsets some of the sales.
When people are coming in, can they watch you brewing beer? Is there a place where you can view it?
Our brewery is in view from our dining room, and there's also a window behind our bar that you can see. And as a matter of fact, I said yesterday we were brewing our our 6-shooter stout. We already have 2 batches of Oktoberfest working. We're going to do another one tomorrow. Friday we'll be brewing again. We brew typically twice a week, and there's not a lot to see. It's a lot of hurry up and wait.
Do they see a lot of sampling from you and your staff, though?
I wouldn't say a lot.
I wouldn't. This is no good. Try it again.
I guess it depends on who's working that day.
Yeah, and what their goals are for it. So, like we were talking about before, depending on who I have on the show here, the economy affects them. But for you, regardless of who the next president is, people are still going to want their beer, right? No matter what.
I think so. And and we have a great menu. It's American cuisine. I mean, we bring in our own salmon that we break down, and our own steak, and we have a great fish guy. It's over 120 items. We make a lot of things from scratch. So we're not just pub grub. I mean, we have the best nachos you're ever going to eat, but we have great items that will fill any palate.
It's ironic that most of your beer is vegan friendly, but then you'll also have the fish and steak available for people to have dinner at your place too. So,
true, but we also, our chili is vegetarian. It's been vegetarian since 1991 when we had our deli.
But there's always going to be plenty of beer drinkers that are going to want their meat with it too. So.
That's true. I haven't done a bacon beer yet.
No, not yet.
But other people have.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, but you got to try it at least.
We'll do
to see how it goes. Is there a website for people to go and learn about it?
www.willibrew.com. WILLIBREW.
And what's on the website for people to go and see?
You'll see our menu, pictures from different events that we've run, our beer list, the awards that we've won. We've won quite a few. We're doing pretty well with Connecticut Magazine Best Brew Pub. I think it's 5 or 6 years running now.
Willimantic Brewing Company involved in social media too? Got yourself a
Yes, Facebook page.
Yeah, you got to have
Twitter.
one of those, yeah.
Yeah, actually now I have a marketing person that helps
takes care
keep
of it.
us updated on those
Good.
things.
It's important. You know?
I'm not much of a blogger, so she prods me and says, talk about beer, tell me what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely, and then she'll take care of it for you on there. David Wallner, the brewer and owner of the Willimantic Brewing Company. If you get a chance, stop up. I think you'll enjoy yourself. Thanks for being on the show today.
Thank you, Sean. I appreciate it.
And thank you for joining us for another edition of For the Record. I'm Sean Murphy. We will see you next time. Take care.